All right, of course I got the wrong screen showing, so let me fix that. There we go. All right. Good day, everyone. This is Jason Straight with the PASS Cloud Virtual Group. Our presentation today is Azure Data Factory version 2, templates and new features, being presented by Joseph Barth. Before we get into the presentation, I do have a few announcements, so if you bear with me for a couple minutes before I hand things over, I'm just going to cover a few things. So first thing is, if you're not currently subscribed to this virtual group, I highly recommend doing so. You can do that by going out to cloud.pass.org, click on the login to subscribe or the subscribe button, both which appear in the same spot, depending upon whether or not you're logged in. And that'll get you information about upcoming sessions and then also any changes to the schedule, which occasionally occur just because life happens to speakers from time to time. Over the next few weeks, we do have quite a few speakers on the calendar. So we've got Joseph today, and then the next week we've got a couple with some IT governance and SQL paths, so plenty of opportunities to learn. And I've got sessions now going all the way out through the end of November. And we are looking to fill the calendar all the way through the end of March right now. So if you are interested in presenting, just send an email over to us at cloud@pass.org, and we can get you onto the schedule. If you want to just send the information over right away, you can also do so by filling out the form that we have on the virtual groups website, which is cloud.pass.org. Now, this fall is the PASS Summit 2019. PASS Summit is the premier Microsoft data platform conference. It's pretty much the go-to event for people that are wanting to learn more about Microsoft data platforms. If you are planning to register and you haven't yet registered, you can get a discount off that registration by using the discount code for this virtual group. That discount code is there on the screen. If you need it in the chat, I can add it in there too. But it'll get you $150 USD off of your registration. Going now through October 2nd, PASS is asking for its members to reach out and let them know what and how they feel about how the PASS organization is being run. So it's a good opportunity to help inform on the future programs and offerings that PASS is putting together. As a thank you, there will be 5 gift certificates given away at the end of the survey. Coming this fall is also the PASS election. So the board of directors is a all-volunteer group, or a mostly volunteer group, that are from the PASS membership. And if you are interested in becoming a part of that, you can nominate yourself to be on the list of candidates. And there's a nominations committee that'll go through and they review the candidates and provide some feedback to PASS about that. But if you are interested in doing so, you can reach out to PASS and become a candidate, and that goes through October 4th, 2019 is when they'll have all candidates, the candidate pool open until. And then this should have been taken out. I forgot to take it out from yesterday, but the Passion Award is coming this fall at PASS Summit, and nominations for that closed yesterday. This virtual group is part of a number of virtual groups that PASS helps to put on and support. They cover areas such as data architecture and business analytics, or different languages even, to help folks that are not native English speakers or who prefer a different language. So there's Global Chinese, Global Hebrew, and a couple others. Throughout the session, if you do have any questions, please type them in, because at the end we'll take some time to go through as many of the questions as time permits. And so just type them in and then throughout the session, and at the end we will answer them. And so at this point, I'm going to hand things over to Joseph for his session today, Azure Data Factory version 2, templates and new features. All right, Joseph, you should now be the presenter.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
Yep, there it is.
Now, can you see my presentation?
That is what I'm seeing.
Cool. Yeah, so Jason, how long do I have here?
Generally, 45 to 50 minutes is kind of the ideal. But if you go a little bit over, that works just as well.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk forever. I tend to talk a lot. So, but yeah, no, thanks again, Jason, for having me. And yeah, I'll go ahead and just start her up, and we'll take it from here. Um, as Jason mentioned, this is the Past Cloud Virtual Group. Um, I'm going to be talking today on Azure Data Factory version 2. We're going to talk exclusively about templates, but then also the new features are going to be in there as well, because everybody's understanding that it just keeps coming, new features every week or every month with Data Factory. But my name is Joseph Barth. I go by Joe. I am an Azure Data Architect, and that's me and Darth Vader. I met him last May. It had been a long time coming, and I really wanted to show you guys that I know him now, and that is very important to me. No, but I do kid a lot through my presentation, so I hope you guys get most of my jokes. But this year was May the 4th be with you. I don't know if you guys we did our SQL Saturday, and that's why I had that on there anyway. So, but so without further ado, let's talk about PASS, right? There's a lot to offer. I've been involved since 2010. I started a group in Albany. I was a chapter leader in Arizona. So reach out to all these different, 24 hours past, your local groups. Obviously, you're in the virtual group right now, so really exciting stuff just in general there's just all this other stuff to do and be a past volunteer. So I can't stress it enough. It's changed my career and where I've been going. I've become this Azure data architect, and I've been doing SQL Server now for about 11 years, and I consider myself a SQL Server veteran. I did development, I did ETL, ELT now. I've done some DBA work, but I wouldn't exclusively put me in the DBA realm because I just never been that person that does the high availability and failover clustering and things like that. But I've done query tuning and data architecture, right? Like I said, I was a chapter leader for Arizona. For 3 years, I kind of stepped back and wanted to do more speaking. So I did that the last year and a half, is just kind of focus on that. I was co-founder of the CSUG, Capital Area SQL Server Users Group in Albany in 2010. And if you know Albany, they've been doing SQL Saturdays now for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And I'm really glad that they kept that going and really successful. That's what the past is kind of about, just to share your knowledge and grow. I'm a sports guy. I played football for 20 years, rugby for 5, golf, basketball, triathlon. I've done Tough Mudders. I like to stay active, so I continue to run. Doing a lot of camping with my wife and my family. Been married for 10 years. I have blessed to have a 5-year-old daughter named Madigan. She keeps me and my wife on our toes. So, also my wife was kind of a big part of the SQL Saturdays in Phoenix. She organized it. I was the beautiful face in front of the actual people doing work behind the scenes. So she knows PASS and understands what it is about. That's just a little bit about me. My handle is Data Movement Guru. My wife doesn't really love the name, but hey, that's what I do. I'm the guy that moves data from point A to point B. And I need to do some more Twitter, and also I have a site, datamovementguru.com, but I don't keep the blog post up to date there. I need to get back on that and do that and some more of that. So that's kind of a little bit about me. So as we continue throughout this presentation, just type in the chat and I'll try to answer questions as per. I'm really kind of a slide guy first, or slide person first, and then move on to the demo and just do the demo for the rest of the time. So I'm going to try to get through the slides fairly quick because really it's a overview Azure Data Factory version 2. I know a lot of people out there have done it. I know a lot of people haven't done it, and some people don't even know what it is and they just want to know more about it, right? You have to have that first kind of what Azure Data Factory version 2 is before we can take you right into templates. Azure Data Factory version 2, it's been, it was in product preview there for a while, I think 2 years ago, and then it came into GA, and I really want to know you to understand what little pieces you need to do to create a successful implementation, right? You need to know integration runtimes. You need to know link services, datasets, pipelines, expressions, parameters, Azure DevOps, Azure Key Vault, and then, like I said, templates and Databricks data flows, which we're going to use in conjunction with templates. So really exciting stuff, and I get really all worked up and almost emotional sometimes about working in Data Factory, but it is what I call a game changer. If you worked with version 1, totally, not totally different, but just it's a lot easier. It's a lot fluid, and we'll talk about that. So without further ado, integration runtimes. What are they? They're the first level. Really, when you create a Data Factory, you create a default Azure integration runtime that is auto region. It decides what Azure cloud region you will be pulling your data from or whatnot. But when you want to get on-premise data, you have to install what is called a self-hosted integration runtime. And there's a walkthrough in a wizard. We're not going to show that today, but there's a walkthrough in a wizard, and that'll connect you to your on-premise services, whether it be SQL Server. I've worked with Teradata. I've worked with Oracle. I've worked with on-premise file shares. So you need to understand that you'll have to install this integration runtime, and there's nuances about that. I am not going to focus on Azure SSIS in the cloud today. I really haven't had a lot of experience with it. I tried it with one company, and I'll talk about why we didn't go forward with it. But it is essentially Azure in the cloud, SSIS in the cloud. You can deploy your packages as per to a run hosted scale set using, and you can also use Azure SQL DB as your SSIS DB. So really quite pretty cool, because you can just spin up and spin down, right? You can scale it at will, which is really a great feature. Understanding the IR concepts, you need to understand when you do Data Factory, like I said before, you will, if you want to get on-premise data, you'll have to install a self-hosted integration runtime with just the regular copy activity, right? So moving data from one store or one data type to another. Now, when you first install Data Factory and you want to spin up Azure SSIS, it is not connected to on-premise. You will need to connect that Azure SSIS to a virtual network. So you need to understand that. And then also, one implementation we did for a client was that we installed self-hosted on a virtual network, on a virtual machine in a virtual network. And then we got to the on-premise data from there. So you need to understand these nuances, as well as that you will have to talk with your network admin to allow different ports. There was like some sort of special route that we had to have for the virtual network they were connecting to for one of our clients. So we didn't go with Azure SSIS because they didn't want to go that far. We did do the virtual network with a virtual machine and installed self-hosted runtime. We actually did and so yeah, if you click on that, I always do that. Let's see. If you click on the picture, it takes you to the white page. It's really good. So you have that available. I do that every time. I'm going to screw up on this presentation so many times, but you know, I'm sure you guys will forgive me. So one thing that I try to stress, and I know I'm going really fast here, but is that the speed of things, right? People are like, oh, well, how do you get on-prem to the cloud? Well, you need to understand that certain things take a certain amount of time. So you're regulated by your system, you're regulated by your network, ExpressRoute. So those are things you just need to understand. This is on the white page, and really it's the numbers are based on what they had in their environment, but you can just see here that in the blue is the cloud, and in the green is your on-prem sources. And so if you connect to on-prem SQL Server and you're pulling data, you're going to get 7 megabytes a second. Unless you're doing Polybase, you're going to get 18 megabytes a second, right? So very slow things. Now you need to understand, and this is one thing that we did, we were pulling 3 terabytes of data from an on-premise Teradata system, right? And so what we did was we did TPT, and we pulled the files to a file store on a file system on their network, and pulled that data in through through integration runtime, self-hosted integration runtime, and we actually set up 4 self-hosted integration runtimes at the same time, pointing to one folder, and that pulled that data at 505 megabytes, 510 megabytes per second. So we got much better throughput. So you need to understand that, right? I'm not going to go too in deep with these. I just want to know that this is something that you need to think about when you're implementing a hybrid solution, right? And so you also need to look at this and say, okay, how fast is data from point A to point B in the cloud too? So best practice is always to stage your data, have it in some sort of binary format, whether it's CSV, limited file, move that to a storage, whether it be data lake or blob, and then you can use Polybase and SQL Data Warehouse to pull that. And we did that for one of our clients, and it worked successfully. So, and you can spin up that SQL Data Warehouse as high as you can. I know it's even more than 6,000 DWU. So that is that. So that's just talking about speed and things, and we're going lightning fast here. It's been the first 10 minutes, but we're going to talk about the key components of Azure Data Factory and how we create our pipelines, right? So we talked about integration runtime. That's our first kind of, hey, set up how do you get on-premise versus the cloud. And now you have the link service. The link service will determine what type of data or data store you're going to pull from, right? And so obviously there's a bunch of Azure ones as well as database ones or cloud service ones or file ones. So you have to determine that on your own. I'm not going to go through them all. You know, obviously we're PaaS, and so there's going to be SQL Server involved here. I always do that. But what I kind of want to show you here is just that when you orchestrate a pipeline, you're going to have to add a link service. You're going to have to add a data set to your pipeline, right? And in here, you're going to do copy activities. You're going to do orchestration. So data sets, what does a data set mean? A data set means that you're going to define what you're pulling, which is going to be your source, and then what your sink data set. So your source data set, your sink data set. So there could be a mix and match of things, right? There could be a file that you want to pull. There could be multiple files. There could be a whole folder of files, and that could be your data set. You just pull the folder, right? You know, like I said, relationally, you can pull from a table. You can pull from a query, SQL query. You can pull from a stored procedure. So there's different data sets that you can pull data from as sources. A data set also can be interchanged, right? So data set can mean sink, which is target. And so you need to understand what you want to do from point A to point B. We're going to go through some simplistic examples today that pull from a SQL database to a Parquet format in Data Lake, which is great. So if we move on, expressions parameters. So I wanted to point these out because why would you even use Data Factory, right? The dynamic ability that it allows you to do, right? And we're not gonna focus on that today. We're going to use expressions parameters to be able to dynamically push values into your pipeline, whether it be a data set, whether it be a for each loop, whether it be any type of iteration or conditional. You're going to use expressions, and you're going to use parameters and variables. So know that it's available to you. We're not going to focus on that today because we only have so much time. But I do want to mention that I'm working on content with Pragmatic Works, and so a lot of this stuff, and you'll see, I'm not going to hit on it today, but you'll see in my environment that I've been working on iterations and things like that. And so you can see that in a couple months when we do create that and it comes out in Pragmatic Works, you'll have that available to you that you can go and use that ability. You can learn that from me at a detailed level. So I didn't want to get too much into it, but I wanted to say that I am working with Pragmatic Works, and we're creating content that works with every step of these, right? I just want to let you know what's available and why you'd want to go to Data Factory before we get to templates. Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps, if you haven't worked with it, it's a full development lifecycle. You manage your projects, Agile, Scrum, build, and then the release part is very important, as well as working in version control and testing. You know, today we integrate Azure DevOps Git using ARM templates. So there's two options: Azure DevOps Git as well as Azure, as well as integrating with GitHub. So GitHub Enterprise. So you can do your version control with Data Factory through these outlets. So Git is, if you didn't know what Git is, it's a way to have version control of your code. This will be all JSON format templates, ARM templates. And what you do is you set up this connection through Data Factory to your Git repository, whether it be Azure DevOps, GitHub, or GitHub. But then you have the ability to create branches. You create a manager off your master branch. You can create your own branch and do your work, and then do merges, right? And so that's really this flexibility now, and this is a key new feature. I mean, this is beyond what you would thought for version 1. I mean, you don't pull down your templates anymore and then display them not display them, but deploy them through Azure CLI or PowerShell, which you still can do, right? So you still have those options, but this gives it a much more graphical user interface, easy to work with. ARM template, if you don't know what ARM template is, as far as Azure Cloud is concerned, Azure Resource Manager, it's using JSON structures to deploy objects, right? And so it gives you that flexibility and ease of use to be able to do that. And you can use, in conjunction with all three of these, you can end up using the release pipeline in Azure DevOps to pass in parameters to your different environments. If you haven't done that with ARM templates, it's the same type of concept. So I might show you it, but I'm not going to show you how to set it up and stuff like that because it'll just take too long. So I am going fast. Speed of lightning, quick speed. Azure Key Vault is adding Azure Key Vault to link service. That's fairly new service, which means that you can save your secrets, your connection strings, all your secrets that you want to keep away from all your other developers in Azure Key Vault, which I said I usually use it for connection strings. You pass those into your link service, and then through your link service you can set up through your data sets. You'd pass your link services and your data sets. You set up that connection, as well as using. So there's two options, right? So there's in Azure Data Factory, you can set up a link service that is Key Vault, but then also you can set up Key Vault in your release pipeline. If you haven't done that in Azure DevOps, I recommend that as well, so you can pull your secrets and send it to you. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, please type it in the message box, because I am going so fast. Please reach out and say if you have any kind of concerns. I know we haven't hit the templates of the demo yet, but there's a lot that I'm covering here. Just please reach out and type in the chat. So as far as what we're going to focus on today, as far as the demo is concerned, because we're getting down to my time as far as showing the PowerPoint. Azure Data Factory templates from existing. So we're going to work with creating a template, modifying it, and then sharing it. And then also we're going to use one of the templates that is a canned template that has to do with Databricks. So it's really actually easy to access. It's from you go in, you click the plus button. Really, you do that to create a pipeline, but you can do pipeline from template, and it'll show you all the options on the right, and it'll give you the ability to select the ones that other people have created. So that's kind of a really cool new feature, is because you might have code that's reusable, right? And you want to have that, right? So Azure Databricks data flow. This is what we're gonna do one of our templates from. This isn't the exact example, but what is Azure Databricks data flow? And as far as we're concerned, it is using Databricks in the background, and with Databricks, it allows you to spin up clusters and use really high compute power for transformations. Data Factory hasn't been known for its transformation utilities, it's only been copy activity. You go from point A to point B, right? And you do a little bit of maybe schema changes. but you haven't been able to do a lot of transformation, like slowly change dimensions. So you usually just push your data to a database and then do call stored procedures. Not anymore. The Databricks data flow, which is in preview, it's available, and we'll go through it. It gives you a lot of different choices to work with. We're going to focus on doing a CRUD operation and merge and that's the template that they give you. And so that's what I'm really excited about showing you. Hopefully we can get through all of that. And then also with Databricks data flow, Databricks and Databricks monitoring, this will show you kind of what went through your Databricks data flow. Does anybody have any questions on templates or Databricks data flow at all? I'll answer anything that you need as far as I can go with it. So you know, what I like to point out at the end of my slide deck is that there's good, the bad, and the ugly. And this really actually hasn't changed since I started talking about Data Factory. But there's a new graphical user interface to create pipelines, which is awesome. That's what we needed. Version 1 was didn't have a whole interface for it. Azure SSIS in the cloud, same deployment of packages. Azure DevOps get continuous integration. That's a focus. You need to understand that you have this ability now at an enterprise level to deploy all your solutions, your data factories, and to dev, QA, and prod with very minimal work. The bad, at first the GUI wasn't intuitive. You have to dig and find things. You still have to do that, but once you get in there and you understand everything, I think you'll start to like it. Requires VNet and other setup, like I was saying, from on-prem sources to Azure SSIS. And then also really you need to understand JSON structures for a lot of the activities. You control those in the GUI, and you need to know PowerShell. Because what if you can't get to your data factory through the web portal? How are you going to check to see? So I would create some canned queries that queries the pipelines through PowerShell, just so you can have those verbatim. Limitation on throughput is regulated by the system. Express route is a must, and also need to understand that it's going to be implemented for PaaS objects, which is a sticking point for a lot of security things for some strange reason. I don't know why. But you need to understand those nuances and when you start to implement and run Data Factory. Does anybody have any questions before I go on to the demo? Jason, just let me know if you can't hear me or anything, or you can't see anything. I think we're going to head on to the demo portion.
Sure, and actually there are a couple questions here if you want to cover them right now.
Okay.
So the first one is how's the handshaking take place between Data Factory and Databricks?
I'm gonna have to defer this to my friend Mark Cromer. Well, not my friend. I mean, I follow him, but the handshaking between Data Factory and Databricks, that's one question that I actually had for the Databricks people when they came out, a couple weeks ago, they came out to Phoenix. They didn't really have a good answer, but because I was wondering if you use Delta Lake for the CRUD operations, but I don't think they do. But yeah, so the thing, and we'll get into that with the Databricks data flow. I'm going to show you that example. When you run it, it'll spin up the cluster behind. Now, when they first implemented it, you could actually do a lot of the, you actually had to connect to your Databricks environment. But now it's all built in, and it's kind of like how do you maintain that, and how do you spin up a cluster to go faster and stuff like that. And so as it improves, I think I'll understand more about it. But yeah, I can't really talk specifically how the handshakes works, but I'll tell you right now, there's the debug option we're going to show you, as well as just running in trigger mode. And right now I have it in debug, so it's actually charging me right now. But if you have it in debug, you have the availability to go quicker. Because I'll tell you, when you trigger it off of the Data Factory, it takes about 6 minutes to even do a very small thing, because you're spinning up clusters behind the scenes, just like the Azure Databricks behind the scenes. So sorry, I wish I could answer that a little bit more, but I think we'll go through this presentation and show you a little bit about how it works. But yeah, really behind the scenes, it's just Databricks spinning up a cluster. It's like you're running, what is it, a run book, and you're running code, but you're not actually doing Python and stuff. So that's kind of how it works right now.
Okay.
I wish I could tell
And
you
then
more.
the second question we have at the moment is it possible to process XML files by using ADF Databricks data flow?
That's a tough one. I haven't seen anything yet because we because I'm working with the client right now, company right now, and that's one of their sticking points is that they have to have things in XML. Yeah, I haven't seen anything out, so I'm going to say no, but that would be a great feature because right now, obviously, I think with copy activity and things like that, XML, you can't do that within Data Factory. But yeah, I wish I had an answer for you on that. That's a great question. Uh, I would, I mean, I possibly probably should reach out to Mark Cromer and answer that too. So look for answers somewhere. I'll try to put in my blog. That's one reason for me to start blogging again, so I can say, hey, I got answers for XML, right? Because that is a sticking point within the Data Factory environment.
Okay. Well, we've got a couple other questions, but I'll let you get into the demo, and then we'll go to get those at the end after that.
So we have about an hour, half an hour left, correct? I just want to make sure that
Correct.
I'm following all things. So I mean, really, if you haven't worked, and it seems like we got a couple people that are fairly involved, so you probably already done this and already know. So just for if you haven't done it yet, you can create templates, right? And so the great thing about that is, if you come in here and you have a pipeline. So this is the environment. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on here. This is Data Factory, and really to log into Data Factory, you don't have to go through the portal anymore. You just go adf.azure.com, and you'll select your environment through here, right? It'll show your Active Directory, your subscription, and then the options to, and so you can have like prod QA in different windows. Definitely done that. It's really cool, really intuitive. Just as an FYI, as a thing to understand. So if I go into QA, it'll bring me usually to the author page, but maybe it might bring me up to the actual, or so yeah, to the what the author page is. And then if we go back, we can get back to the get started page. And this thing, if we close that up, I wanted to show this because when we set up Git repository, you can remove your Git and handle your Git from here as far as know which repository you're connected to, what project, what repository name. So if I were to remove that, then I would have to go through setup again. But we're not going to focus on setup. We're going to show that it is working, that I do have it set up as far as deployment's concerned. So we'll get it working if it's not working, because I've been messing around with this environment. So with that said, if we go back to the development environment, and we're in author, right? And that's where we're going to do a lot of our creation of the pipelines and orchestration. To get to the templates, you'd go pipeline from template, right? But first, let's create a template. So, and this is going to be simplistic. I'm not going to run this. It's just showing you how to use that feature. So I have something that I think can be reusable throughout the company, right? Or throughout your environment. Now, if I were to go ahead and save this as a template, it would come up with these options. You have the template name, so we can say _cloud, give it a description. Hello, this is cloud test. And if we add like a site that, and you'll see that with the templates, they'll have actually documentation links where they go to the white pages and show you more setup stuff. That's where you can do that, as well as adding a past cloud. Let's go that tag. So when you can have it searchable if you get too many templates and you want to make it searchable, you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and save that template. The only reason I'm able to do this is because I do have Git set up with master branches. It will not let you do that if you don't have it set up. With that said, it's now saved as a template, and in order to access that, actually it looks like we still need to publish. So our changes will be published to our Git repository. And if we were to actually go to our Git repository and look at the repo, you can see in Azure DevOps Git, Azure DevOps Git, I'm going to keep fumbling that, you have that ability to work with different branches, right? And so I'm in here in the master branch, and that's where I've been working. But you can see that, I've already done a couple tests, test 1, test 2. So coming back here, if you see the publish completed, no changes to the publish branch. Now, maybe it might have done it on the save, but if we were to come back here and we refreshed, we should be able to see a new template here. If we can find the refresh button, I always forget. I'll just refresh the whole thing. Yeah, so there it is. And so this, like I was mentioning earlier in the presentation, the biggest thing here is the ability to have all your code in one place. Within this, I guess to specifically say, this master branch holds not an ARM template, but JSON structures of all the pipelines, the link services. This is the JSON structures. So this isn't your ARM template, and I'll go to your ARM template, but you can download these, and that's my next kind of thing. I'm going to go ahead and download the cloud one as a zip file, and that's going to go, in here. So you can see I already done the test on it once, but so that's downloaded that template I created, and then you can use that code, right? Same thing with pipelines. Remember that you can come in here through one of your branches, download all your pipelines, and then load them back into a different branch, and then have them available. I've done that with data sets where I wanted to clean up all the names in the data sets and do that programmatically and just save that. Then you'll need to publish that out. And when that gets published, it gets published to the actual ARM template that we're going to deploy, right? So I don't want to get too off onto ARM templates and release pipelines, but this is what will happen: is it'll make a change and it'll save it here, and then we'll pick that up in the release pipeline. Does anybody have any questions on how to, if we go back here, how to create a template, save a template, and then be able to download that template, export that template, I guess. You can do it here, but then also, if you go in here, you can actually export the template by going to the template. And we have a folder for that, right? Because it's a folder in there. We can actually export the template here as well. Very kind of just intuitive. You can delete the template, export the template. So it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be a zip file. Now, if I come back in here and I wanted to use the template I just had, I'd go to pipeline from template and then import template. And then, as you can see, so yeah, just to make sure you have that available to you, a lot of whoever logs in and has access to this data factory will have the ability to use that template that we had just created. But importing template, this will import, and I think it'll add another one to it or something, but if we go like that, or you can just rename it. Kind of intuitive, easy use type things with, and so, let's see if we can get that to move. Clear all, and then this is where some of my demo fails. Okay, and then you select your link services that you'd use for that demo. And this is the beauty of having a template, is that you'd come in and you check, as far as somebody from a different part of the company wants to use this template, or a different developer was doing something different with it, as far as using different sources, you come in here and choose your sources that you have set up, or you create new ones, and then you take off from there. And we'll show you that with the one Databricks Dataflow one. So I'm not going to do anything to it, but that just shows you that I'll just go ahead and save that, and it'll be in here, Cloud One. So if we go here, I wonder, pass. So if we go cloud. So I think that's what your tag will show is like, come in here and you have the, like I said, you have the documentation link that I saved, and it goes to that. So pretty cool. Gives you the ability to then save all your work and have it reusable in one place. You can clone pipelines and you can do that, but this gives it a more kind of centered area for that. But let's move on from doing our own templates and use the ones that we have here. Does anybody have any last minute questions on, I guess, why you'd create your own or anything like that, or just how that works? It's actually fairly straightforward, right? It's just knowing the nuances and trying to get those to work. You can even you can even add. See, if I were to even see if we refresh this, it's pretty cool. I like to mess around with things in here because to see how it works, and I'm really kind of a good tester at that. But you can even add a template from here too. So instead of importing, it would show up, right? And you'd have to save that and deploy that. But I think I'm good on showing you how to create your own, and how the usability is very important there, because you can then disperse that to as many people as want. So great thing, and really when templates first came out, I was like, why didn't they have this before? Because I was pretty much creating templates for all my talks and sending people, these pipelines and having them loaded, and hey, why? So now you have that ability to kind of see through all these different types of categories, and so that's where I'm coming to you now. And within the last 15-20 minutes, I wanted to focus on the data flow. So the Databricks ones. I haven't really done a ton with them. I know, like I was saying, if you look for Mark Cromer, he is kind of the head guru on Data Factory as far as, and he works a lot with the data flow stuff. He has a lot of good videos, so I would reach out and see what he has. But this one's recent. This one called Parquet CRUD Operation, and if you're working with Databricks, best practices say that you should probably have your data in Parquet format, which is a compressed format for large amounts of data, right? And that's kind of the focus of using Databricks in general, is large amounts of data. You want to do these heavy operations. You want to do transformative operations, doing slowly change dimensions, rule-based. Look at all these options that you have, and that's why I really wanted to do kind of talk on templates, is that this code is reusable. Although, and you'll see when we go through this, I'm going to try to run it without it failing. Well, I'm going to try to create it again and have it run to go through the steps, because I wanted to give you guys something, and I need to give it to Jason, but I have SQL scripts that you can create some examples for this. So without further ado on that, I want to get into the example that I'm going to use, Databricks Dataflow. So in order to use one of those templates, you'd go and you click the template that you want to use, and like I said before, you select the different services that you want to use. For this example, and this is going to be kind of a hard sticking point, and I'm still hesitant about going through it too fast. What is happening here is that this template creates a pipeline that calls a Databricks Dataflow, and then and also creates a Databricks Dataflow. So it creates two objects, right? And in the pipeline, all you do is just call the Databricks Dataflow, and that's how you actually run a Databricks Dataflow. So in the Databricks Dataflow, that's where you do your implementation of transformations, and that's where these are going to utilize the different services for, and we used ADL's generation 2. So we're going to go ahead and use it, and this will go through, and we're going to talk the steps of what's going on. Of course, I think, you know, it wouldn't be a great demo if it didn't fail. So let's cross our fingers. Like Jason has mentioned on the chat as well, we will publish. I'll publish my slide as well as the example that I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to create a separate pipeline and save it for you. But really, it's just actually using the template, but then also utilizing Azure SQL DB's sales T database that you kind of get when you create a new SQL database and they give you an example, right? It's like the benchworks of Azure SQL DB. So with that said, it's created a new one, and you can change the name from CRUD to CRUD Cloud. So this pipeline, like I said, is going to call a data flow. And to access the data flow, you can either go in here, because it's automatically created it, Parquet CRUD 3, or you can double click and then it'll take you right to it. That's kind of a key thing to do. A lot of things do that, right? A lot of the data sets and things like that, when you're working copy activity, if you really wanted to drill in, you can drill in that way. So there was some setup, right, that I had to do, and this will be a part of that deploy that I'm going to send. Let's not go through the implementation quite yet. I actually have to create records, and the way I did that was I used SQL database for my example, and I actually focused just on one table. I focused on the sales LT address table, and I have the steps right here. So create tables by running this script, and then we will run create. We'll run the create Parquet CRUD records pipeline. And what that'll do is take the data from these tables that we created in here and put it into Parquet format in here in the data lake folders. Okay. And so in here we have Parquet folders of all the representations of the tables that we want to. And the main idea is to do a merge and do a look at a set of primary keys, and then decide if something's been deleted, and then if something has been inserted, updated. So we're doing really a CRUD operation. So we're not using Delta Lake, which is kind of disappointing, but it's definitely a step forward in doing kind of a merge statement within data flow. So I ran that. We got the tables that I want, and then those tables will be put in here into the primary PK tables in this table, as well as the output table, this output table, which is very important because this is the existing data that we're going to merge against. So we're going to either remove records, we're going to insert, or we're going to update. So if we were to look at, so there's that. So I could do this real quick. Like I could destroy everything and see if it will work. We'll go ahead and do that. So I'll go ahead and delete. This is the great thing about Data Factory, is that it'll create the folders underneath, right? So I just kind of really just destroyed my environment, which, you know, is either good or bad. So there's nothing under there. So the province health, you know more about that. But you come in here, there should be those folders that I just had. If I were to go and run the pipeline that I create all those Parquet files, and I'm going to give this to you, you just trigger it. It goes out and it grabs the tables that we created from my create statement and puts them into Parquet format. As it's doing it, we can quickly go through how that's done. I create a data set through link service, and that data set will load from those existing tables. So I did that for both, all three tables that I needed to do, which is input, primary key, and then output. So that should be successfully done. And you know what I'm probably going to do is make a recording of this in depth maybe as well, and have it on my Data Movement Guru site. I should do that for you guys as well because I'm going really fast, and there's just a lot to cover. So that ran, and then it created all the files that we needed to successfully run that Databricks data flow using the AdventureWorks or the Sales LT database from SQL DB. So they're in Parquet format. Now they're accessible, and we can do the CRUD operation. If we were to go in here and we go, now the problem with, not the problem, but the way templates kind of work, you need to form fit it for what you're doing, right? It doesn't know that we're using the address database. And so that's where we're going to find problems, is that if we come in here and we look at the PK table, and actually the PK table is fine because I created the PK table to be that, but the PK table has PK update, date, and table name. If we were to go to the PK table, it has PK table name and update because I created it that way. But the other ones you need to actually pull in the schema, and we'll do that right now. So if you come in here to the input data, and you go here, and you go to projection, thing is, the data set, when it's sourced out and it created the data set, it did it with just 3 columns, and we'll see those columns right here in the schema. PK, column 1, column 2. So it's kind of just setting you up for success because, well, you're going to fail first when you run this because column 1 and column 2 do not exist in your Parquet. If you were to import the schema from the connection, there you go. We get all our schema, and now that we have the schema, we need to save that. But let's go back. We're going to have to do that for the existing data as well, the output data. Not optimized, sorry. I always forget you got to go to the actual data set to pull in the schema. And we'll do that. PK address line 1, 2, city, state, yada, yada, yada. So now that we've made that change and everything should be fine, I don't think for the output, I don't know if it really matters to do the schema. I guess we still did it anyways because we grabbed the existing data. So we'll go ahead and save that. When you save it, you should be able to debug from here. I'm going to go ahead and publish anyways. Kind of do that on habit, but you need to understand your environment and how you want to maintain that and because this will trigger off a release, right, to QA, which we're not getting into because we don't have that much time. But it's going to publish that to the Data Factory. And you need to understand that just in a context of where you're at in the environment. When you have Git set up, we can go to the Data Factory, and those changes that we just deployed should show up here. If we have, see, it says Parquet Club, yes, they should be here, but you need to understand that there's context here. I'm in Git when I run it, and I'm in the master branch, and I'm running this here. So your debug session timed out. Great. So let's talk about that. So here's, in order to run this, we actually need to have, sorry. in order to run the Databricks data flow we just created, we need to have Databricks running, right? And so in order to do that, you have to have data flow debug for the debugger if you want to debug through it. And actually, that's the best way to do it if you're doing a lot of executions, is to do it through debugger. We're going ahead and trigger it off because when we run it through debugger, when we first click on debug flow, it's going to take 5 minutes because it's spinning up behind the scenes, and then we're going to run it. But what I did right now is actually trigger this pipeline to run the Databricks data flow behind the scenes, and so it's going to take 5 minutes actually to spin it up. And so the actual running of it's going to take a little bit longer than. So you need to understand that when you're trying to do small implementations and things like that. So I can try to get this to run, but it's going to take 5 minutes to spin up that, and it gives you a warning. This may take several minutes to start up, and you initiate your data flow debug session billing. So you need to understand that you're spending money when you have debug open because your setup behind the scenes is charging you. I wonder if we can go to that integration runtime to see. So everything's running behind the scene. If you go to integration runtime, you might be able to see how much cost is just to run activities. So these are the ones that I ran earlier, and you can see right here that we ran the pipeline right. So where did we run the pipeline? Execute data flow right here. Execute data flow. I just want to show you. Well, we'll go back to the main dashboard. Pipeline run. So this is the main monitoring system. I really didn't hit on that, but right now it's running and it's trying to really just spin up the Databricks system, which is clusters. If you come in here, you'll see that this is drilling down to see what's happening within the pipeline because this is an actual pipeline that's being run. If we look at this, you can see that it's been running for 2 minutes. Really, it's not actually executing any code yet. It'll be like 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and that's just how Databricks works in general when you spin up a cluster. So that needs to be known, and that's why debug is so important because you get debug working and you can have this whole implementation run in a minute instead of waiting 6 minutes every time you run something. That's why when I got out, I killed my debug session, which is a demo failure, but that's the way it goes. Let's see, if we were to actually look at one that I did before, you can see right here, the Parquet CRUD 2, we drill in, and it took 7 minutes, right? That's what I'm saying, right? Like it's very slow just because you got to spin up the cluster behind this, but you got to realize if you're going to do large amounts of data, 5 minutes is nothing when you're doing millions and millions and you're trying to do an update merge on from millions to millions to millions, right? So if you come in here, this is, like I said, the monitoring portion. We get a way to see how much data is flowing through the system. And if we were to click on one of these, it would show you a bunch of good information about the output. You can look at these, what the inputs are, what existing data, and how these work. In kind of ending, because this really wasn't about how data flow works. It's really the usability and use of pulling in fairly either fairly complex templates and being able to use them right away. That's what I wanted to show. If we were to look actually at the data flow and how it works, and that'll be one of our modules, I think, within Pragmatic Works, going through and understand each little bit of these. But I mean, I just, pulled this one yesterday. I was like, this is great because I really want to understand the merge technology, because actually for the client I'm having is having this problem. They're running a lot of merge stuff in Databricks Dataflow, and they have to do all the setup and all this. This is a little bit more straightforward on how it's done. They really just use a primary key table to determine if something's been deleted. It filters out the deleted ones into a stream using the existing data, and then using that same existing data, um, I mean, no, it pulls out from the changed data, sorry, of the ones that the deleted ones that are from the original primary key set. So if I can say that real quick, like let's say if we have a primary key set that has all of our deleted files in it already. So if I come here, I have a primary key table and I deleted 50 out of there. And then you had, actually, you'd want your primary key table to have everything in there, and you'd have your change data set to only have the data that you want, I believe. I'm screwing the demo up. But anyways, you kind of understand how that little bit how that works. What you'll do is you'll do an exist to see if the data there's been deleted data from your one set to another using your different streams. And so the great thing about Dataflow is you can create streams. So there's a PK stream, an input stream. The PK stream is used here as well as the input stream is used here to then look for updated data, and then that updated data becomes another stream that is used to append to the deleted data. So that kind of, in a nutshell, that's how that works. And let's see, did it finish? Oh man, it's taking forever. What should happen is it should have a result out here called merge. There you go, and it's done. So then if we pull this down and in ending, I wanted to show you that it did result in something. Whether it's right or wrong, I'd have to work a little bit more to make sure that I get the correct. Why is that? No, because I had delete. There we go. This is the only way that I really know how to actually view Parquet without having to pull it from some other source. I have an Apache Parquet viewer, and I downloaded it onto my local, and this is the updated version. It has about 400 records, and I updated number 9 somewhere in here. I wish it has a sort by feature, but it doesn't. But I've updated the columns in number 9. So its original data set 9 was Yosemite, and now it's 888 West Riverside. So it did update that. It deleted the records that I wanted to delete. So that shows you that you can use you can do a lot more transformative stuff, but also that you have that ability to find those templates right here. So I think I'm done with my presentation, my demo.
Okay.
Jason,
Ready
do you
for
think
some
anybody
questions?
has any more questions? Or
Yeah, there are a few questions here. We can go through a few of them. I got a few more minutes where we can just extend it out a little bit if you've got the time.
yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of went over. I get kind of hung up on sometimes doing almost an impromptu demo. Yeah, so I'll answer
Yeah.
definitely questions.
Okay, so we'll start with this one. If the self-hosted IR is deployed on an Azure IaaS VM to support VNet connectivity, is it possible to have the IR behind a third-party firewall deployed on an Azure IaaS VM, which would control all external traffic when connecting to cloud data sources?
So I'm not the network guru here, but our client that we worked with about a year and a half ago, and this is really when first Data Factory was in preview, we had to have certain portals and opened, and they went through different routes as well. The thing is, with integration runtime, it goes through the public internet, I believe, and I mean, I'm not a network guy. I wish I was better at it and understand. I think they were isn't there like a Palo Alto or something like that network? I think they were trying to implement that as well. But yeah, in order to get to your PaaS objects, I know specifically through that network that I was working on, we had to have things opened up as far as routes, as well as IP addresses to get to our PaaS objects, not just Data Factory in general. But when we installed self-hosted behind that firewall, it wouldn't reach out to take the key, and because we took the key and what it does is a hand, like they were saying before, just kind of like a handshake. You install that, but then you generate a key in here that you copy and you paste into that the wizard to make that connection, and it wouldn't do that. So we had to work with the network. I wish I knew more about it as far as network routing and things like that, but I can't answer that. So we worked more in the, so that was the first kind of, hey, test go around, and then we were like, well, it'd be a lot quicker if we did an Azure VM. So we did self-hosted on Azure VM, and it was a lot easier to work with allowing self-hosted. I just don't know the exact specifications on that, but we installed four node integration runtime. And I did a video on that on Data Movement Guru, how to set that up. You can look at that, but I definitely didn't do it in the environment that in that client, because yeah, I mean, I just had my own network and working on it. But yeah, that's kind of the answer that I have for you there. I mean, it is something that you'll have to work with an Azure network admin to allow, and they have to look and see what traffic specifically allow that traffic to go through. Because I think they were encrypting going in and decrypting going out, or something like that, and they had to actually kind of look at that channel and say, don't encrypt and decrypt, as I'm remembering how it worked. But you need to understand that. Yeah, it definitely is a gotcha if you can't use self-hosted if you're trying to get on-prem.
Okay. And then how much does it cost approximately to use ADF for learning and creating test pipelines?
So, I mean, I can show you, I mean, this one isn't, of course, billing is laid back as far as what I've done here, just to test. If you don't use any of this, and most of this right here, most of the cost here in what you're seeing here, I've done, I'm creating content. So I've been working on this environment for probably a month or so, but it is really minimal as far as just creating and saving pipelines. And if you're not running them, if you're not moving data, so cost is always variable. I'm not going to say that I'm going to say, hey, it's not going to cost you anything to move. And I wonder how expensive it was today for me to run Databricks Dataflow, as well as running the debug session. That's going to be running constantly, but it's going to be very minimal in nature. The most cost here that I have in this environment is I set up a couple SQL DBs that were $5 a piece. That's why you're seeing $18. But if you're not moving a lot of data, if you're not working with a lot of data, it's going to be very minimal, right? And if you're moving a lot of data, if you're trying to get, you got to understand that when you move that data up, I think it uses data integration units now instead of data movement units. And of course, there's always the Azure calculator, but obviously within the Azure calculator, there's going to be some differences, right? And I'll show you a couple here. Data Factory. Go to it. Got to remove stuff. Got a bunch of stuff here at the bottom. Internet's going crazy. Okay, so there's absolutely a lot of options here. The one thing that I would say on this, if you're just testing, you're really not spending a lot of money, as long as you're not as long as you're not spinning up Azure SQL DW, right, or your Azure SQL DB is not a high value. I mean, those are the costs that are going to get you. Now, unless you're doing thousands and thousands of executions, I just don't see you spending a lot of money. But even with self-hosted, right, just testing it out, I would say it's very minimal, maybe even less than $10 a month, really, just to test. Like, especially what I worked with, very small amounts of data. Data lake is per how much you save, right? Databricks, Dataflow, this is where it can get expensive. And so you come in here, Data Factory, read and write, you can calculate all of these, but really it's pennies on the dollar. And if you don't use them, if you have things spun down in your pipelines, it's like for every pipeline, it's like 10 cents a month or something like very awkward in nature. But so for instance, like I spent 3 hours today, maybe. It won't let me do above. There we go. I don't know why. That's weird. Okay, so it cost me like, if I were to choose the instance of a compute, which I don't think I really did. This is a compute optimized. Like for 3 hours on one instance, a data flow is $1.73. So I don't think I spent a lot today, but I'll find out. I mean, it's not like it depends on what resources and how often you're spinning up, spinning down. Like I said, in debug mode, when the debug mode is turned on, which it is now, it's charging me money, right, for the debug. And if we come in here and if I were to run it, even if I'm not running the debug mode right now, I'm still getting charged, right? And but when you trigger it, the time that it takes to process, so that 6 minutes, I get charged pennies on the dollar. So I hope that answers it. I mean, the cost is always variable. A lot of people, some companies are really centered on cost and cost savings. I would say, Azure, just in general, you have the ability to save money. Whether you use that ability or not, that's up to all the things you put in place to manage that. Because they're like, things are just costing all this money. Well, you need to understand how many instances, right? If you have dev QA prod, if you're running those all the time, that's when you start incurring costs. Running them all the time, you get paid, you charge for execution time, right? But it's it's manageable. So yeah, I would say if you're just doing testing, you're not going to spend much. So that's my answer.
All right, great. And that's about all the time that we have for questions for today. We do have a few other questions here, and what I think I'll do is I'll just send them over to you, and then whether you want to blog about them or just respond back to them, and I can post it with the session materials. And either way works great for us. And so,
yeah, definitely.
thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe, for presenting today. So thank you, everyone, for attending. This has been a great session. Lots of great information. And thank you, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.